Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Under Review with Jared John. Each episode will analyze the impact the sports world has on society, such as gender equality, race, economy, history, and much more. So step up to the plate and come listen in. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Under Review. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate everyone that listens and everyone that watches. I have a very special guest today, but before we go to that, you know what I like to do? I like to show you guys a good, happy, fun video. So for today, this kid is he's playing fun with the camera. He's staring down at the camera, see who blinks first, see who smiles first. And it's just fun to watch. And then you see later on, the mom catches on, which is pretty funny. So hope that video, makes you smile, makes you laugh a little bit. And, now back onto the show. I have a very special guest with me today. She is a professor at Montclair State University in the Sports Media and Journalism Department. I took all of her 3 classes. Prior to MSU, though, she spent 14 years as a writer for USA Today, and she covered the Olympics, the World Cup, and college national championships, and so much more. She is currently a part-time writer and part-time contributor for the New York Times, and before that, she was a reporter for the Sports Illustrated. It is my pleasure to introduce one of my favorite professors, Professor Kelly Whiteside. Well, thank you, Professor Whiteside, for being here so much. I really do appreciate it. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, Jared.
Thank you for being here. So we'll just get right into it. You've had an amazing career, and you're still having an amazing career with a lot of success, in terms of writing for the New York Times. You've covered the World Cup and the Olympics. Which is your favorite piece? Which is the piece that you've written that you feel like that's your favorite one, and why?
That's a hard question. I could go way back, but I'll just go in the last couple of years. So probably my favorite story, just because it was fun and a little bit different, was a story I did last NBA season on Jarrett Allen of the Nets. And not a lot has been written about him or had been written about him at that point. So it was just sort of fun to kind of be one of the first to write about kind of behind the basketball players. So, so that was one of the recent favorites. And what makes his story unique is that he's sort of the atypical stereotypical NBA player. He, built a computer from scratch. He's this math whiz. A lot of NBA players are really active with their charities, but he did something really cool on right before Thanksgiving. He took a bunch of kids from Brooklyn to the food store and gave them a budget, $100 each, and a calculator, and went shopping with them. So to teach them sort of a math lesson. So it was fun to do that with him and the kids, and, and just sort of being in a food store with a 7-foot whatever guy that can reach, tall things on high shelves. But so that was just a fun story to do.
And I remember you showed us that piece, being in your class, you showed us that piece and you were really proud of it, but you also showed us, the importance of using detail in your pieces. Real quick, are there any tips or advice that you could give writers, trying to perfect their writing and to just be a better writer?
Yeah, so I always say in class, there's 2 ways to become a better writer. And nobody's born a great writer, right? It's a craft. So how you get better at any craft is that you practice it. So the 2 ways are to write, and write some more. And then the other way is to just read critically. So when you read something, you just sort of stop and ask yourself, well, why did I like that? Or why didn't I like that? Or what stood out to me? And if you start noticing that, it's almost like through osmosis, it becomes part of the way you write, because you're critically examining what elements you liked in other people's stories. So those are really the 2 ways, and there's no, secret sauce. It's just, do it, and do it some more.
in one of your classes, I can't remember which one because I took all of yours. You showed a documentary by ESPN called "Let Them Wear Towels," and it
Mhm.
talked about how women reporters really had difficulty getting, interviews and getting the information that they need from the players, in terms of getting in the locker room and dealing with that. Have you had any, personal problems going through your, illustrious career?
I was really lucky. I mean, I had really minor stuff. Just I remember when I was just starting out in my 20s, I was down in spring training, and one of the clubhouse attendants, and a lot of the times at spring training, you have retirees kind of manning the clubhouse.
Yeah.
So it was more of that I wasn't allowed in the locker room. It was as opposed to, something happening at Yankee Stadium, or something like that. But I was fortunate in the sense that what I covered, though I have covered all pro sports as a beat, I mostly did colleges and then international events. So while I saw a lot of my friends go through issues as they described in that doc that you mentioned, even my best friend from college had an incident at Augusta, where she wasn't allowed in the locker room, and that was maybe 7 years ago. Um, I fortunately have had a bit of a charmed life in terms of not having to deal with that. That said, it's been clear from what's been in the news this past week about the Redskins, or the Washington football team, what is, some of the sexist discrimination and harassment that women, not just reporters, but women that were working for the organization felt, experience. So that brought up a lot of stories. After that ran, two of my friends wrote about their experiences. Some of the pioneers that were in that doc have wrote about their experiences when they were covering the team in the 80s. So, I mean, clearly the issue hasn't gone away. It seems like every, couple of years, there's kind of a big incident that brings it more into the forefront. And this thing that happened with Washington is just the latest.
You just talked about in terms of reporting, especially now during this pandemic. How have you gone about reporting, and are there any precautions that you have to take? And, with this pandemic kind of going on, it's kind of hard to get interviews. How have you gone about it?
Well, unfortunately, some of the stuff that I was going to cover was canceled, right? So I was going to do the women's college basketball tournament, right? So that was canceled early on. And since nothing's been going on, the only thing I've been working on is sort of an investigative story in which people aren't being helpful, which has nothing to do with the pandemic. So I think, but just to answer your question, I think on one hand, people have had a lot of time on their hands. I just happen to not be working on any of those stories, in which people have nothing else to do, so they're able to talk to you and they can't really escape. And obviously things, I don't have any planned live coverage coming up because that's pretty much a controlled set of people, in the NBA bubble. So kind of what I'm working on right now is just kind of issue related stories, and stories that I'm looking to do kind of this fall and this spring.
Well, I did take one of your advices, and I am writing. It's
Good,
nothing published, but I am writing a lot. So
good,
I did take one of your advices. We'll
good.
switch, going to the WNBA. Carol Blazejowski was on the show a while ago, The Blaze, and she was incredible. And she talked about how she feels like that the WNBA is slowly but surely getting more recognition. And ESPN posted something, and it said that just from the draft, it went up 123%, just from viewership. How does it feel like, you've covered a lot of, female sports. How does it feel like do you believe that the female athletes are finally getting the recognition that they deserve? And do you see it increasing or, kind of just staying the way it is?
I think it's helped, that women's soccer, the NWSL, while everybody, including me, doesn't have access to the CBS channel that a lot of the games have been on, they have had games on regular CBS, and that's helped because that was really the first sport that came back. And I think people are so excited to be able to watch sports again, with baseball and the NBA and the WNBA coming back. I think I would not be surprised if viewership is up for the WNBA. Though I am optimistic about the growth, until it is covered like the other sports, or until you can watch all the games on, either network, or you can access it more freely. I think there's still a long way to go. Things like what happened this past week with the NWSL and a new team in Las Angeles, backed by, celebrities and high profile athletes. Like that's tremendous, because it brings in eyes that maybe not focused, or maybe not even knowing that there is a women's sports league. So it's all good. I still think, there's such a long climb until we, see more women's sports covered, highlights. Even watching ESPN, I think I was watching Around the Horn yesterday, they were talking about the NWSL, which I don't really, if they don't have it on their networks, they usually don't go out of their way to talk about it.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's a combination of there's not much else to talk about right now, but anyway, I'll take it. I'll take it however it comes.
Shout out to Sky Blue FC. That's my team. So we
Yeah.
lost last night, but I did watch.
Yep.
And it's fun. I went to the Sky Blue FC game, and obviously the ticket prices between male and female are drastic difference. I think me and a couple of acquaintances, we paid $25 and we were right behind the goal. And you just don't get that at a male. So, but yet they're both competitive and they're both fun to watch. So I agree with you. Switching on, you mentioned that since there's no sports to watch, you wrote a piece and I read it and it was really amazing. You wrote a piece called "Can the Rebirth of a Negro League Stadium Revive a Distressed City?" And right now we're kind of a distressed country. So how do you, in that piece you talked about how sports can bring just that city together. How do you feel like sports, either it's, the NWSL or, even MMA with UFC and how basketball and baseball coming back, how do you see sports, bringing the whole nation together?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think now more than ever, it's so needed. I mean, in your lifetime, there's definitely been big moments in history and tragedies in which people really leaned on sports, right? After 9/11, particularly. But I think right now, people just need something to rally around, right? With all the division in the country. I think what we've seen is really interesting. We've talked so much about, Colin Kaepernick and those that came before him that really brought their voice and used their platform to stand behind social causes and issues with race and other issues of inequity and discrimination. And I think now what we're seeing is, some of the movements in the country, the Black Lives Matter movement, the kneeling isn't as controversial, it seems,
Yes.
right? The Redskins, Snyder, the owner of the Redskins, said he would never change the nickname. And, where we are in this past couple of months, we're at a place that, he vowed never would happen. So I think it's like you've got what's going on in the country, you've got the pandemic, and then you've got sports, right? And I think the thread of sports navigating the country through some of this time. It just goes to show kind of what you're saying, like the power of sports. Like, it's not dividing people, right? I mean, the Kaepernick issue definitely divided people, especially early on. It's sort of bringing people together, to celebrate kind of the return of so-called normalcy, right? At least competition, if not in the stands. So, it's kind of going to be an interesting couple of days as different leagues kick off, because people are so hungry to kind of watch and cheer.
Yeah. I always tell people I feel like sports is one of the very few things that you could be in an arena and you're watching your favorite team, and say if they score a goal, say if they score a touchdown, you could high five the person next to you. Even though you don't know them or you may not know them at all, you always have that bond because sports just brings people together. So I always say that. And, you mentioned Kaepernick, and I've learned so many things just from taking your courses, and you're a very powerful teacher in what you teach. How do bring that to, your illustrious career, bring that to teaching? I know everybody's main goal as a teacher is, to have the students learn and, hopefully adopt it, but you teach with such a passion. Can you just talk about that? And you're such a good teacher, and how do you just keep going?
Thanks. I think, as you said, I kind of have a passion for it. I have a passion for both things, right? I definitely have a passion for writing, and thankful that I'm able to do it still. And I've always had a passion for teaching. I mean, even I've been at Montclair State now. We'll be going into my 6th year. But before that, when I was reporting full time, I was an adjunct at different places as well. So I think it's that passion, and it's exciting for me to kind of bring that knowledge of my experience into the classroom. And what I always say in sports media and society, because those are the kind of the stuff that I'm really interested in, like the Patterson story that you mentioned. If people can come into the class, and whether they're sports fans or not sports fans, but just leave the class after a couple months kind of viewing sports through a different lens, like I've accomplished my mission. Just to think about sports in a different, more critical way beyond how we're used to, right? Which is, who's our team, who's our favorite players, what do we grow up with, what's our favorite sports, which is all great, and which is why we love sports. But also if they can see, exactly to your last question, kind of the larger issues that affect society because of this ball or bat or whatever.
One of the last things I'll say is one of my last memories of your class, you brought in your dogs, and they kind of gave the light in the room. I just want to make sure, how's your family doing? How the dogs doing? And are you going to get more dogs?
It's funny you say that. No, I have 2 dogs. My daughter she was up at 7:30 this morning on petfinder.com because she's trying to convince me to get a ferret, which
Oh boy.
The dogs will we know what would happen, because we know what happened to her hamster named Grace that got out.
Oh.
It didn't end well. So she's like, since I'm not saying yes to any small thing that the dog sees as a plaything or food, she's trying to convince me to get a dog. So I'm not getting another dog, but everybody is great. The 2 dogs are good. She's great. And we're glad that pools and beaches and gymnastics and all that fun stuff is open again. And hopefully keep going in that direction.
Well, thank you so much. I want to say lastly, thank you for teaching me all the helpful and important things. I have my award, like I said, in the back corner, and I wouldn't have got that without you. So I really do appreciate you, Professor.
You're the best. I wish I wish I had a classroom of Jared's for the rest of my teaching career.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. All right. You take care.
All right. Thanks, Jared.
Well, that'll do it. Thank you so much to Professor Whiteside. I really do appreciate you taking the time and, being on the show with me. And that'll do it for this episode. Like I always say, I don't know who'll be the next guest, but I know it'll be amazing. And I just want to say thank you so much for everyone who listens and everyone who watches. I'll see you guys next time.